So when you have four terms, you always have to use or have to try to use your factoring by grouping. And factoring by grouping is very, very, very easy as long as you know what to do. Step number 1, just go ahead and group the first two and the second two. All right, so group the first two and the second two. Now you're going to look at each one piece by piece. So we're going to look at just the first two and ask ourselves, what is our GCF? What is our common factor between these first two? And we can look at it and we can see, well, we have 1, an understood 1 right here, and 5. So obviously our GCF is just 1, can't do anything there. But then if we look closer at our variables, we see that our GCF is y squared. So I'm going to factor that out. When I factor that out, it's going to leave me with y, because we had y cubed, take away 2, we have 1 left, y minus 5. So we did the first one. Now we're going to look at the second one. And the next GCF of this is just going to be a positive 6. So I'm just going to positive 6 right there. If we divide this out, it'll be left with y minus 5. Now, that was step number 2, finding your GCF. Step number 3 is just double checking that this parenthetical statement matches the other parenthetical statement. As long as they match, you know you did this correctly. If they don't match, that means one of two things. 1, you either made a mistake, or 2, you cannot factor this. So I will tell you that in Algebra 2, almost every single 4-termed polynomial that you get is probably going to be factorable by grouping. So most of the time it's number 1, you made a mistake somewhere. So the final step you need to do is to take your parenthetical statement and put them together. So they just sort of come together like this. And then you're going to take the 2 pieces that did not or were factored out, and you're going to put these 2 together. And that becomes your answer. So it's very simple. All right, so we'll try the next one. Step number 1, group your first 2 and group your second 2. Step number 2, factor out your GCF of the first 2. So if I factor out the GCF of the first 2, that's going to be, it looks like 2, or not 2, I'm so funny, 16, which will give us 2. So we'll factor that out, 16n squared. Then that'll give me 16 divided by 16 is 1, n cubed divided by n squared gives me just n. 32 divided by 16 gives me a positive 2, and n squared divided by n squared is just 1, so that goes away. All right, so we factored our first one, and now we go to our next one. It doesn't look like we can take out a variable, so let's just try positive 1, and I'll show you what I mean by what I said earlier. So I'm factoring out a positive 1, which means nothing's going to really change in my parenthetical statement. All right, step 3, I need to make sure that this matches this. Well, they don't. Okay, so that means I made a mistake. So I'm going to go back, and instead of taking out a positive 1, this time I'm going to take out a negative 1. So for the first term, it's negative n divided by negative 1. That's going to give me a positive n. Then I go to the next one. Negative 2 divided by negative 1 gives me a positive 2. Well, now they match. So now I know I did it correctly. They come together, n plus 2, bada boom, bada boom. And then the 2 pieces that did not stay inside of our thing, the GCFs, come together, and that becomes our final answer.